श्री स्वामीनारायण भगवाननी जय, अक्षर पुरुषोत्तम महाराजनी जय, प्रमुख स्वामी महाराजनी जय, महंत स्वामी महाराजनी जय, प्रमुख स्वामी महाराज शताब्दी महोत्सवनी जय. Today's session will begin with I-38. There was a Hari Bhakt by the name of Jiva Bhai Lakhani from the village of Shianagar, but he used to live in Surat. And he had come to take labh of Yogi Bapa's darshan and seva while they were in Surat. He would offer his seva by bringing hot water for Yogi Bapa while he would be taking a bath. And while Yogi Bapa would take a bath, he noticed that Yegiji Maharaj would often talk very highly of Pramukh Swami Maharaj. And so Jiva Bhai, gradually developed great respect and admiration for Pramukh Swami Maharaj. But one day while Swamishri was seated with a few devotees in a goshti, when they were all getting together, some Hari Bhaktos and Santos were sitting, Jiva Bhai had a thought in his mind and a wish that if Pramukh Swami Maharaj would come and bless my place and would have something to eat at my place. That's what he wanted. And just as he was thinking about all this to himself, Pramukh Swami Maharaj called him closer and asked him if he could go get some gari while they were in Surat. So he said, can you get some gari from the mandir? And I want to take some back with me to Atladra to offer it to Thakurji and then offer it to all the other santos as well. Jiva Bhai was surprised. He was actually shocked. And at this he felt, that Pramukh Swami Maharaj actually read my mind. So some things like this would also happen. This is a nice incident from I-38. Let's move on to I-39. Pramukh Swami Maharaj and Yegiji Maharaj eventually made their way to Atladra to celebrate the festival of Vasant Panchami. And during the main assembly, Yegiji Maharaj showered his blessings on everyone. But while he was doing that, he said some very nice things. He said, Have Pramukh Swami ne કાર્ય સોંપ્યું છે તે બાકી પૂરું કરશે. Basically, all the responsibilities have now been given to Pramukh Swami Maharaj. He will fulfill everything else. શાસ્ત્રીજી મહારાજે સાતેય મંદિરની સોંપણી એમને કરી છે. Shastriji Maharaj has entrusted him with the responsibility of all the 7 mandirs. અમદાવાદમાં ચાદર ઉડાડી. Yegiji Maharaj is reminding everybody that Shastriji Maharaj entrusted Pramukh Swami Maharaj with the presidency in Amliwali Pod, Chadar Udari. That's very significant of that. And then Yegiji Maharaj goes on to say, Amliwali Pod have meethi thai gai che. So there's a play on words over here. Amliwali Pod is the name of the street where Pramukh Swami Maharaj was given the presidency. Amli is a fruit that's very, very, very sour. But Yegiji Maharaj played on that words and saying that Amli wali pod, Amli meaning the bitter or the sour, has now become mithi, mithi meaning sweet. So again a play on words over that. But after Yegiji Maharaj's blessings, Pramukh Swami Maharaj then offered him a garland. Mahant Swami Maharaj then offered a garland to Pramukh Swami Maharaj. And when all the Hari Bhaktas had gathered to perform Yegiji Maharaj's pujan, so all the Hari Bhaktas got together to offer their respects to Yegiji Maharaj and to offer him garlands, Yegiji Maharaj said to everybody, Sambro Bada, Aje sau Pramukh Swami nu pujan karo. So he stopped everybody and said, listen, today you have to offer your respects to Pramukh Swami Maharaj. Aje sau Pramukh Swami nu pujan karo. Tema Shastriji Maharaj ane amaru pujan avi gayu. So basically, listen everybody, today perform the pujan of Pramukh Swami Maharaj. And in that pujan, you've offered pujan to Shastriji Maharaj as well as myself. So all the devotees, inherently understood Pramukh Swami Maharaj's Mahima. It was a very nice way of Yegiji Maharaj explaining the Mahima and the greatness of Pramukh Swami Maharaj. Now after the Vasant Panchami celebration, so let's move on to I-40 now. So after the Vasant Panchami celebrations, a grand felicitation ceremony for Yegiji Maharaj had been organized in Vadodara at the Nazar Bagh Palace. So we can see an image of the Nazar Bagh Palace in Baroda. Now this palace was the Gaikwad monarchy's royal palace. and it was located in the city of Vadodara. It was built in 1721, and as you can see, it was 3 stories high, and it was one of the oldest palaces in Vadodara at that time. The palace had been sanctified and blessed by Bhagwan Swami Narayan, and was a very significant landmark. And as a result, it was a very significant landmark in the Sampraday's history. Nilkant Varni had also stayed very nearby at Mandvi Gate for about 3 days during his Vijran in 1799. The Maharaja Sayaji Rao Gayakwar II had felicitated Bhagwan Swaminarayan here by organizing a grand procession in his honor around that time in 1825. Now today, at this very place, history was repeating itself again, because now Yegiji Maharaj and Pramukh Swami Maharaj were also being felicitated at this place. Pramukh Swami Maharaj spoke in the Sabha, and once the ceremony was over, Yegiji Maharaj and Pramukh Swami Maharaj were seated on an elephant named Rupakali, which was as part of the grand procession. So we can see that, just like Bhagwan Swaminarayan was welcomed in a procession, similarly, even today, Pramukh Swami Maharaj and Yegiji Maharaj were also welcomed in this great procession, seated on an elephant. And this was, reminded everybody of 150 years back when such history took place again. So we can see in the image over here, the procession of where Pramukh Swami Maharaj and Yegiji Maharaj were seated on this elephant on the streets of in Baroda. A very memorable and historic occasion took place at that time. Let's move on to I-40 now. While they were in Nazarbagh, Swamishri did a Parayan of the 2nd chapter of the Satsang Jivan. And back then, a Parayan simply meant a recital of the Sanskrit verses, because the Satsang Jivan was written in Sanskrit. So normally, previously, it would mean that you would just read it in Sanskrit, the verses would be read in Sanskrit, and then a translation into Gujarati. But Pramukh Swami Maharaj introduced the tradition of singing the verses, and not just singing them, he would also give a translation, and would also explain the meanings by giving very practical messages, using analogies and different examples to make it much more palatable to the audience. And it was always a delight just listening to Pramukh Swami Maharaj narrate some of these Parayans. Many of us have heard Pramukh Swami Maharaj also speak in the Sabha over here. Always, very pleasant to listen to Pramukh Swami Maharaj, the way he would narrate it. He had a very interesting knack in the way he would narrate incidences. It was almost very lifelike, and it brought a lot of joy to people who would be there in the audience. He also had a very charismatic way in which he would engage with the audience as well. So we can just remember or just imagine how this Satsang Jivan Parayan in Nazarbagh took place. Yegiji Maharaj was so pleased with the way Pramukh Swami Maharaj delivered the Parayan. And in his address, Yegiji Maharaj said, "Kevu sarvopari Parayan. Pramukh Swami કેવું વાંચે છે, સૌને સમજાય છે ને, બીજા હટ જલ્દી વાંચીને શ્રીપતિમ કરે, પતંગ ઉડ્યા ને સૌ ઘેર ભેગા, માટે થોડું વાંચવું પણ સમજીને વાંચવું." Yegiji Maharaj was explaining that the way Pramukh Swami Maharaj read was so nice. કેવું સર્વોપરી Parayan. He was so happy with the way he said this Parayan. And then he compared Pramukh Swami Maharaj to many others who just, very quickly finish one after the other. And so similarly, Pramukh Swami Maharaj, Yegiji Maharaj talked about Pramukh Swami Maharaj and the way he would actually read this Parayan. Let's move on to I-42 now. Now there was a Hari Bhakt by the name of Raman Bhai from the village of Sokhda. He came to meet Yegiji Maharaj during this Parayan. And he explained to Yegiji Maharaj that he had just released himself from a partnership and ended that partnership. And he wished to offer some of the money that was there as a donation, as per Shriji Maharaj's Agna. So then he said, "Yogi Baba, whatever you wish, I will contribute. I will make that kind of a contribution to the satsang at that time." Yegiji Maharaj directed him towards Pramukh Swami Maharaj, and he said to him, "Go speak to Pramukh Swami Maharaj and then donate 1/10 or 1/20, basically 10% or 5% of the share that is guided by Pramukh Swami Maharaj." And then Yegiji Maharaj goes on to add that he shouldn't get carried away or influenced by anyone else in this regard. there must have been other people who would be advising him otherwise. And so Yogiji Maharaj made sure that, Raman Bhai was in sync with this. And then Yogiji Maharaj goes on to say that Mari Sathe Jevo Seva Bhav Che Tevo જ હવેથી પ્રમુખ સ્વામી સાથે રાખો તો અમારો બહુ રાજીપો છે. Again, these words helped Raman Bhai strengthen his respect and admiration for Pramukh Swami Maharaj. On the other hand, there were many others with Raman Bhai, some of his colleagues, who unfortunately fell away from satsang for not being able to uphold Yogiji Maharaj's agna. And so again, Raman Bhai often remembers these words of Yogiji Maharaj. Now on the last day of the Parayan, when Pramukh Swami Maharaj came to offer a garland to Yogiji Maharaj as a show of respect, Yogiji Maharaj actually stood up and accepted Pramukh Swami Maharaj's devotion. Now this was again something very unique, because this wasn't, Yogiji Maharaj wouldn't do this that often. But it wasn't something that Yogiji Maharaj would do normally, but this was Yogiji Maharaj's gesture of showing how happy he was and how pleased he was with Pramukh Swami Maharaj. Let's move on to I-43. Now, Pramukh Swami Maharaj's next Parayan was going to take place in Bharuch. In Bharuch, they traveled from Surat and Atladra. They traveled to Bharuch. Pramukh Swami Maharaj did the Parayan on the Hari Lila Kalpataru. And it's incredible to see how he was able to balance the Parayan, his Vicharan, along with the administration. But obviously, as the Pramukh, as the president of the Sanstha, there were so many administrative responsibilities. Now, all three were completely different and mutually independent fields, and each demanding separate skill sets. To do a Parayan requires so much preparation. And Pramukh Swami Maharaj, it's incredible to find out, just to imagine where he would find the time to prepare for the Parayan. And it's incredible how the topics would keep changing. The scriptures would change. It would be the Hari Lilamrit. Sometimes it was the Hari Lila Kalpataru. Sometimes it was the Satsang Jivan. And sometimes Yogiji Maharaj would instantly say, "Ki Parayan chalu karo." And Pramukh Swami Maharaj would be ready. So we can see how proficient he was also in the way he would deliver these Parayans. Not to mention how taxing the Vicharan would be, because we know that Yogiji Maharaj wasn't too well. So Pramukh Swami Maharaj would have to do all the padhramanis and the traveling. Not only that, he would also have to organize the transportation and the rest of the administration. And along with that, there were so many other administrative responsibilities, meetings and things like that Pramukh Swami Maharaj would have to be involved in. So again, we can see, he did this so smoothly. It was incredible. It was an incredible trait of Pramukh Swami Maharaj. From Bharuch, Pramukh Swami Maharaj then traveled to Maganpura. Now here there was the Murti Pratishtha ceremony of a beautiful Hari Mandir in this village. 4 brothers from the village of Kandari had actually helped to build this mandir. So they were there for this Murti Pratishtha Utsav. From there, Pramukh Swami Maharaj and the Santos, they made their way to Adas. Adas, we know that is Pujya Tyag Vallabh Swami's village. So they went to Adas. Yogiji Maharaj then left for Anand from there, while Pramukh Swami Maharaj, Mahant Swami Maharaj and Dr. Swami and some of the other sadhus, they all traveled to Mumbai. So Yogiji Maharaj goes to Anand, Pramukh Swami Maharaj to Mumbai. Now the primary reason for visiting Mumbai was to check up on the ailing health of Hari Jivan Swami. Hari Jivan Swami, again, a very senior sadhu from the time of Shastriji Maharaj, a very close friend of Pramukh Swami Maharaj as well. They stayed there for 3 days in Mumbai, and then Pramukh Swami Maharaj eventually came back to Anand to join Yogiji Maharaj. Let's move on to I-44. Now, as soon as Pramukh Swami Maharaj came back to Anand, he was asked to continue with the Parayan. As we mentioned earlier, it wasn't. It was just a surprise that Swami had just come back, and then he was entrusted with the responsibility to complete the Parayan. So Swamishri then did the Parayan, but most of his day, after the Parayan was over, would be spent visiting the shops and the stalls in Anand's bazaars and the grain markets. And what was his role? What was he supposed to do? He was there busy, humbly asking and begging for alms. In particular, tuarni dal. Now, during these 4 days where he did the Parayan, he would tirelessly walk around from one town, along the town from road to road, and he collected almost 1,000 muns, that's about 20,000 kilos of pulses. Pramukh Swami Maharaj was like the breadwinner of the BAPS family. The way The way he would constantly bring back, because if Swami did all the collection of the grains, that's how, the Santos and the Hari Bhaktos would be able to carry on with the festivals and feed all the Hari Bhaktos in the mandir. And we could see the Pramukh Swami Maharaj working so hard day and night just so that everybody else could carry on doing satsang at ease. This was one big role that Pramukh Swami Maharaj played. Now, while they were in Anand, Yegiji Maharaj and Pramukh Swami Maharaj also visited the Agricultural Science College at the request of Dr. Ranchhodbhai Patel, who was the Dean of the Agricultural College. Then from Anand, Pramukh Swami Maharaj then went to Ahmedabad, where he went to meet Sri Ravi Shankar Maharaj to inquire about his health and well-being. Ravi Shankar Maharaj was a very well-known, very humble, very down-to-earth social worker in Gujarat. Both Yegiji Maharaj and Swamishri, they prayed for his well-being. Now from Ahmedabad, Pramukh Swami Maharaj then left for the mines of Makrana, which is in Rajasthan, turning his attention from sermons, doing katha, to the stonework. Swamiji wasted no time over here. Now we can see Vicharan, and again katha and seva, perfect balance. Swami was there in Makrana for about a week. Swamiji then accomplished the mammoth task of selling off most of the leftover stones. We remember in previous sessions, we had heard how Yegiji Maharaj had instructed Pramukh Swami Maharaj to sell off all the leftover stones from the previous constructions of the mandirs. They negotiated a very favorable deal with Atmaram, who was a sannyasi from Anandpur. And then they traveled to Ahmedabad and then to Sarangpur to celebrate the Fuldol Utsav in the presence of Yegiji Maharaj. The very next day, Pramukh Swami Maharaj then traveled to Botad, Gadda, Adwal, Jhadia, Limbdi, and eventually got to Rajkot at midnight. Incredible traveling from the life we can see in Pramukh Swami Maharaj's life. Now we will move on to I-45. So from Rajkot, Pramukh Swami Maharaj then went to Bhaisdad, where he did another Parayan. The Parayan was on the Harilila Kalpataru. It's interesting to see how he spaces the next 4 days Pramukh Swami Maharaj spent while he was doing the Parayan. So after the first day of the Parayan, Pramukh Swami Maharaj then went to Bhadra with Yegiji Maharaj to inspect the progress of the ongoing construction of the mandir over there. Then they came back, spent the night again in Bhaisdad. On the second day of the Parayan, Swami did the Parayan in Bhaisdad. Then the second day, Swamishri then left to reach the villages of Meghpur and Jasapar to do more padhramanis over there. So again, he's in one village, does the Parayan, moves to another village, does some padhramanis over there, comes back. On the third day after the Parayan, Pramukh Swami Maharaj then stayed in Bhaisdad and he did about 60 padhramanis over there. Now 60 padhramanis is a mammoth task to do in one day. But yet Pramukh Swami Maharaj carried on doing that as well. Now following the Parayan on the fourth day, then Pramukh Swami Maharaj left with Yegiji Maharaj to go to Latipur. Latipur was the birthplace of Atmanand Swami. Now Atmanand Swami, Sadguru Atmanand Swami was the guru of Ramanand Swami, who later then handed over the reins of the fellowship to Bhagwan Swami Narayan. So as per Yegiji Maharaj's wishes, the devotees of Bhaisdad had renovated the mandir which was located in his birthplace. Yegiji Maharaj had consecrated the murtis of Akshar and Purushottam. He did the pratishtha over there in this mandir as well. Now during the 4-day stay in Bhaisdad, Pramukh Swami Maharaj also visited 4 of the other surrounding villages over there. So it's incredible to see the Vicharan also going on. From Bhaisdad, Pramukh Swami Maharaj then went to Dangra. Here Pramukh Swami Maharaj did another Parayan on the Harilila Kalpataru. Yegiji Maharaj performed the Murti Pratishtha of the Murtis of Akshar Purushottam Maharaj, Bhagatji Maharaj and Jaga Swami at the mandir that was built on Jaga Swami's Samadhi memorial site. Then Pramukh Swami Maharaj made his way to Ahmedabad. Let's move on to I-46 now. So while they were in Ahmedabad, Pramukh Swami Maharaj completed some work regarding the furniture of the Chhatralaya in Gondal. And then on the following day, Pramukh Swami Maharaj then interviewed prospective teachers that were to be appointed for the new school in Gondal. Swamishri then left for Anand by train and then to Bochasan by car. Now this little detail over here says so much about Pramukh Swami Maharaj. He completed the work regarding the furniture for the Chhatralaya. So obviously the construction of the Chhatralaya was taking place in Gondal, but Pramukh Swami Maharaj was there in Ahmedabad also inspecting the work for the furniture. He was also interviewing the teachers for the school. So, and then traveling by train to Anand, and then traveling to Bochasan by car. While Swami was in Bochasan, he finished the purchase of some other houses surrounding the mandir and then made his way to Ahmedabad. Yet another small detail, બીજા બધા આજુબાજુના જે મકાન હતા એ પણ લેવાના હતા. So it's incredible to see so much work going on at that time. And then he held discussions with the artisans that were constructing the new entry gate for the Atladra Mandir. So many projects going on parallel to this. Eventually, Pramukh Swami Maharaj then boarded the train from Vadodara to go to Mumbai. From Mumbai, Pramukh Swami Maharaj then made his way to Kolkata. A very hectic veteran at the age of 47. Let's move on to I-47 now. Swami made a small note in his diary traveling to Kolkata, and this is what he penned down. So this is just a small note in his diary. Today at 7:15 p.m., 13 of us left on the departing Kolkata mail. Puja Sant Swami, Mahant Swami, Dr. Swami, Ishwar Swami, Narayan Bhagat, Hari Prakash, and Narayan Prasad Swami. Dev Charan, Pragat Bhagat, and I, as well as Puja A.P. Patel, Hakka Bhai, Narayan Bhai, all departed. Devotees came to the station to bid us farewell. It's worth noting that the train journey from Mumbai to Kolkata was about 66 hours long. It was a 66-hour-long cross-country journey during the hot summer. Whenever the train briefly halted at the railway platforms in Akola, Nagpur and Rajpur, and other places en route, local Hari Bhaktos would flock to the train's compartment just for a glimpse of the darshan of the sadhus. Remember, Yegiji Maharaj wasn't on the train during this time. It was just Pramukh Swami Maharaj and the santos that were listed in the previous list that we talked about. Yet we can see the mahima and the affection that the Hari Bhaktos had for the santos, that they would actually, go all the way to the train station just to meet the sadhus at that time and offer their respects. And after a nearly 3-day journey, they finally reached Kolkata. The devotees of the entire Kolkata Satsang Mandir were very eagerly waiting to welcome Swamishri and the accompanying sadhus and the devotees. As Swamishri and the others got off the train coach, they were welcomed with flower garlands and the sounds of a marching band. Their accommodation had been arranged at the residence of the son of Gariraj Sheth, Jadavji Bhai. So he was there to welcome them as well. That's where their accommodation was. They all celebrated the Swaminarayan Jayanti, the Sri Swaminarayan Jayanti, in the presence of Pramukh Swami Maharaj on April 8th. Pramukh Swami Maharaj then also visited the Swaminarayan Mandir of the old diocese for darshan. They also visited various other religious places, which included the Belur Math, the Dakshineshwar Mandir, and the Jain Mandir. And Pramukh Swami Maharaj spent a lot of time doing padhramanis in Kolkata. It's interesting to see how the satsang in Kolkata also flourished because of the time that Pramukh Swami Maharaj and the santos spent that time. He also conducted lots of satsang sabhas in the mornings and the evenings. Now these sabhas did not gather large amounts of numbers of Hari Bhaktas. But for Pramukh Swami Maharaj, that wasn't an issue. No matter how large or small an audience was, Pramukh Swami Maharaj was there to give 100% and focus to all the Hari Bhaktas. Again, as we mentioned earlier, for Pramukh Swami Maharaj, Hari Bhaktas were his number one project. Let's move on to I-48 now. Now, during some downtime, when things were quiet, there were not many padhramanis going on, Pramukh Swami Maharaj would engage in a lot of lighter moments with the sadhus who were there as well. And on one occasion, during a conversation, a sadhu casually asked Pramukh Swami, Swami, you are a senior sadhu. You're also the president of the Sanstha, the Pramukh Sanstana. Yet, why don't so many people gather in our sabhas in large numbers? Now, it's a very awkward question to ask. In fact, it could be very embarrassing even for someone. But Pramukh Swami Maharaj's reply was very interesting. Pramukh Swami Maharaj શું કહે છે? પ્રમુખની શી ગણતરી? પ્રમુખને કોણ પૂછે છે? આ તો શ્રીજી મહારાજ, શાસ્ત્રીજી મહારાજ અને યોગી બાપા જેવા પુરુષોને લીધે તારીને મારી શોભા છે. Again, giving all credit to Bhagwan Swaminarayan and the Guru Parampara. પ્રમુખની શી ગણતરી છે, બાકી કોઈ ખીચડી એ આપે એમ નથી. No one is there to even give us any ખીચડી. આ તો યોગી બાપાની સાધુતાથી આ શેઠિયાઓ, કોલકાતાના બધા વણિકો છે, એ બધા અહીંયા આવે છે. So Pramukh Swami Maharaj is giving all the credit to Yogi Bapa. It's because of Yogi Bapa that people come and see us. So the sadhu then responded saying, Pan Swami, aap pan sadhuta vada cho. This is what the sadhu said. And Pramukh Swami Maharaj said, એ બધું ખરું, પણ યોગી બાપાના તો આપણે દાસ જ છીએ. Again, expressing his humility and his das bhav towards Yogiji Maharaj. Then a few days later, Yogiji Maharaj came to Kolkata. The devotees of Kolkata had been eagerly waiting for Yogi Baba, almost 12 months for this moment. They were so excited to have the darshan of Yogiji Maharaj. And, right from the morning, from the Mangal Pravachan, right to the night, hardly anyone would miss an opportunity to spend any time with Yogiji Maharaj. And while in Kolkata, Yogiji Maharaj expressed a wish to build a Hari Mandir in the city. And so there was a drive for donations at that time as well. The Kolkata Yuvak Mandir was also founded at that time. And then Yogiji Maharaj gave a tremendous, accordingly, Yogiji Maharaj and the Santos who were there, they gave a tremendous boost to the satsang in Kolkata. So this was a very historic visit in 1968. Let's move on to I-49. Now, during the stay in Kolkata, there was an exhibition displaying Pujan Narayan Prasad Swami's paintings. We can see an image of Pujan Narayan Prasad Swami. The paintings depicted the essence of spirituality through modern art. And the exhibition that had been organized in a hall at the United Commercial Bank. Yogiji Maharaj had specially inaugurated this exhibition. Now, on one of the days of the exhibition, Tarashankar Upadhyay, the eminent Bengali literature, was there to visit the exhibition. So, in order to be present at the exhibition venue, during this visit, Narayan Prasad Swami also wanted to meet him. And he was desperate and needed a jod, because obviously the sadhus have to travel in pairs. But the question was, who was going to accompany him to the venue? There was already a shortage of sadhus. Everybody had something else going on. They were so busy with other things involved as well. So Narayan Prasad Swami was left in a dilemma as to who to take with him. He was a little worried about missing the whole meeting. Nevertheless, Pramukh Swami Maharaj was a master at understanding people's emotions, and he realized the dilemma that Narayan Prasad Swami was in. Immediately, he walked up to Narayan Prasad and approached him and offered him that, look, I'll come with you as a jod. Swamishri was ready to drop all his work just to accompany this sadhu. We can see how flexible Swami was at that time. Narayan Prasad Swami was so impressed with this gesture from Pramukh Swami Maharaj. He was still in a dilemma. Can I take the president with me as a jod, to accompany me? Eventually, Mahan Swami Maharaj jumped in to solve the dilemma. And then he accompanied the sadhu. He says, look, I'll come with you as a jod. Let Pramukh Swami Maharaj stay and finish off other duties as well. So this was a very nice historic prasang in the memory of Narayan Prasad Swami. Let's move on to I-50. Now, after visiting the painting exhibition, the award-winning Bengali literature Sri Tarashankar, he came for Yogiji Maharaj's darshan. He was so impressed after having had Yogiji Maharaj's darshan as well, that he said to the Santos that your Guru appears to be as powerful as God. Visitors who has the first experience of Yogi Bapa, this is the first experience that he had. Okay, your Guru is as powerful as God. And Tarashankarji, he also met Pramukh Swami Maharaj at the same time. And then he said to the devotees as well, he said, this Pramukh Swami is a sant worthy of being meditated upon. We can see that Pramukh Swami Maharaj and Yogiji Maharaj had profound impressions on anybody who they came into first time when they met them. And today we'll end our session over here. Shri Swaminarayan Bhagwanani Jai.